Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on? It's Kyle Henderson, Andrew Bone. Breaking news. Jalen Milroe is in for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Flips from Texas to Alabama here with Andrew Bone to break it all down. Bone, gigantic news tonight with Jalen Milroe jumping on board. What does it mean for the Crimson Tide?
Well, it means Alabama got its quarterback. Very exciting news, for the Crimson Tide. Getting Jalen Milroe on board, one of the top quarterbacks in the country, member of the Rivals 100, flips his commitment from the Texas Longhorns to the Crimson Tide. And I think what many people may have forgotten about is Jalen Milroe was heavily favoring Alabama last summer. We saw Jalen Milroe, Drake May both come in pretty much at the same workout at the same camp, and Alabama was extremely high on both of these kids after camp. Well, Drake May decided in July that he wanted to go ahead and jump on board with the Crimson Tide, which basically meant that Alabama had to wait in terms of taking a second quarterback in the 2022 recruiting class if they were going to take a second one at all, because Bryce Young had yet to make his decision. So Alabama took Drake May, and then all of a sudden they had to wait a little bit longer for to make a decision on Jalen Milroe because of Bryce Young. And at the time, Jalen Milroe decided to commit to Texas. Well, as we know, Bryce Young signs with Alabama. Drake May, I believe it was March the 1st, decommits from Alabama and flips to North Carolina, home state school. His father, brother, both played his father played football there. His brother played basketball there. But Alabama, continued to recruit Jalen Milroe throughout the entire time. Even when Drake May, was still committed, there was still an open line of communication. It was still going on throughout the entire process. So it wasn't like Alabama just, started recruiting him again once Drake May decommitted. They were always talking to him, and that relationship was very strong throughout the entire process. And we've been saying for the last several months, ever since Drake May decommitted from Alabama and flipped to North Carolina, that really need to watch out for Jalen Milroe, because there was a possibility there. I thought he would probably have to get back to Alabama before a decommitment from Texas would happen, but as many people probably saw over the weekend, Quinn Ewers, the number one quarterback in the 2022 recruiting class, committed to Texas the other day. So, that's something that we said, it's something to watch. We don't know what's really going to happen just yet, but it's something to keep an eye on with a 5-star quarterback committing in next year's recruiting class. It may push Milroe over to the Crimson Tide, and it certainly did this evening. So big news for Alabama. They get the quarterback that they have heavily recruited for a very long time, and certainly one of the guys that was probably one, I guess from the start to finish, one of the top two guys on Alabama's recruiting board at the quarterback position.
Well, when we look at Jalen Milroe, I mean, guy's a specimen. Kid's a baller, right? I mean, Alabama doing work in the Lone Star State. Let's talk about him as a player. Checked out his highlight tapes. I mean, this guy's electric on the field.
Yeah, he certainly is. I mean, he's 6'3", 195 pounds. He's got a great arm, very strong arm. Very good at escaping the pocket. Always keeps his feet moving. Always looking downfield. I'm certainly impressed with what I've seen on the film. I haven't had a chance to see him in person yet, so really looking forward to hopefully seeing him in person one day. But you got to like what you see on film. Great leader. Had a great junior season. About 2,700 yards passing, 29 touchdown passes. Also had close to about 400 yards on the ground as well. So certainly a great dual threat quarterback. Certainly he's somebody that can beat you. And he also has the running ability, much like another quarterback who played in Tuscaloosa for a while, also from Texas, also with the name Jalen.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting. So if you're just joining us tonight on BamaInsider.com, please, first of all, hit the thumbs up button. Tons of news today, Bone. I mean, the news didn't stop. And when you're covering the Alabama Crimson Tide, it's go, go, go. And that's the Bama factor. So if you want your team nuggets, go to BamaInsider.com. We got the full scoop from practice today. Alabama just got their official schedule for the 2020 season. And then this evening, Jalen Milroe jumps on board with the Crimson Tide. Monster pickup for Alabama, as Andrew Bone has alluded to. This is their first quarterback. And we talked about it before. Is Alabama going to take a quarterback? Are they going to take a running back? And then, where there was smoke, there was fire. And Texas just picked up a commit from the class of 2022, and Jalen Milroe jumps on tonight. Bone, we had talked about Luke Altmaier. Jalen Milroe jumps on board. Alabama finally has their quarterback now up to 19 commitments. I'm going to bring it up on the screen right now. This class has so much momentum. Following Monkel Goodwine, Kyrie Jackson, now Jalen Milroe. This class, and I just wrote an article on Sunday, close to leapfrogging Ohio State, or at least pushing the Buckeyes for that number one spot. How much momentum does this recruiting class have going into, I guess, September, which will be the first month, hopefully, of college football?
Yeah, tremendous. Certainly a different spot than they were 2 months ago. I think Alabama was number 61 overall in the country about 2 months ago. We kept telling everybody, be patient, be patient. Now Alabama has 19 commitments, right there on the cusp of that number one overall class in the country. I don't know if Jalen pushed them to number one just yet, but certainly, very close if they're not already number one, but certainly a tremendous class. You got to think, with the offensive line class, the wide receiver class, probably pretty excited to get an elite quarterback on board in Jalen Milroe. Even though Bryce Young's there, this is a guy who's extremely talented. He's got plays with a lot of confidence, and you never know what may happen. We've seen through the years. We saw Jalen Hurts come in and be the SEC offensive player of the year during his freshman year, and then a couple of years later, Tua starting. So it's very possible that he come in and make a tremendous impact. But it also gives Alabama some tremendous quarterback depth, because you just don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of years. And Jalen Milroe joining this class, somebody that I thought last summer, I was confident that this was going to be the guy in Alabama's recruiting class. And then all of a sudden, Drake May commits, and I think Milroe was. I think at the time when Drake May committed, I think he was a little disappointed, because I think he was heavily favoring Alabama. He was probably close to committing, and then all of a sudden Drake May commits, and he ends up having to he ended up making a decision. I don't excuse me. I don't know if he rushed into that, or if he was, just said, all right, I'm going to go ahead and commit. Texas was my number 2 school, so that's where I'm going to go. And but now with Alabama, opening things back up, and he certainly had a tremendous relationship with the coaching staff. Steve Sarkisian and Jeff Banks. Jeff Banks, the lead recruiter. Steve Sarkisian, obviously the quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator. He built a tremendous relationship with those guys throughout the process, and I think they're very, very instrumental in landing his commitment. And something to also keep a very close eye on moving forward is his old teammate and very close friend, Tumise Adelie, just recently decommitted from the Ohio State Buckeyes, and he's a big-time target for the Crimson Tide. So for certain that Jalen Milroe is going to be recruiting Tumise Adelie, the 5-star defensive end, to join him on the Crimson Tide's commitment board.
Yeah, Bone, when we look at this class and we kind of look at the overall picture, I'll bring up the screen one more time. You see that there are, I believe, 4 prospects that are committed to Alabama from the Lone Star State. Can you talk about what Alabama has been able to do in the state of Texas? And it's really impressive that, despite everything going on in this country, Nick Saban and his staff still able to dive in to Texas to pull the Brockemeyer brothers, Kendrick Blackshire, and now adding Jalen Milroe. Talk about that, please.
Well, I think it's huge. The fact with COVID-19, shutting the country down, and a lot of these recruits not being able to take visits, during the spring, during the summer, and Alabama still being able to get a lot of these guys on board. I think it's been, pretty spectacular. Like I've been saying, I've said this on our recruiting show several times. I felt like, with guys like Jalen Milroe or Luke Altmaier, 2 guys who are, quarterbacks that are committed elsewhere. I kept thinking Alabama's going to have to get one of these guys back on campus in order for them to, potentially flip. I said, if Alabama can get one of them on campus, they've got a great, great chance to flip them. And, from what we've seen so far this year, Alabama doesn't have to get kids on campus to commit, or even a second time. We saw Christian Leary commit to Alabama without ever visiting. J.C. Latham committed to Alabama without ever visiting. So seeing a lot of that happen this recruiting cycle, all because of COVID-19, but it's certainly a different situation than what everyone's accustomed to. But I think this is one of Alabama's best recruiting jobs, because very low number of in-state kids. The majority of their guys are from out of state, and they're doing a tremendous job recruiting in different parts of the country. But especially the state of Texas and the state of Florida in this recruiting class.
Bone, overall, I mean, the recruiting class, I mean, really heating up. Everybody wants to know who's next, who are other guys kind of on the verge to jumping on board of this class of 2021, as we talked about, who's just electrifying. Who are some other guys that Alabama fans should watch for in the next couple of months, the next couple of weeks that could be on commitment watch? I know you mentioned Tamisi Adelie, but who are some other guys that Alabama fans should be tracking, should be watching?
Yeah, I'd certainly watch the tight end position. I keep thinking a tight end is going to jump on board eventually, and it's certainly going to happen. And the two guys I'm continuing to watch are Robbie Oots out of Rock Hill, South Carolina, and Jalen Sheed out of Olive Branch, Mississippi. Two guys that I think either one of them calls Alabama this evening and says they want to commit, Alabama's going to take them. But I think they're only going to take one. So it's going to depend on who decides to jump on board first. And Alabama likes both of those guys a lot. And I think a decision can come very soon for either one of them. And obviously we're always tracking Kool-Aid. JaQuincy McKinstry, the number one player in the state of Alabama, could be very close to making a decision as well. It's top three of Alabama, LSU, and Auburn. A lot of talk about Auburn, here lately. All the talk was said. I think Alabama is still very much in the picture with him. A lot of other guys that Alabama is heavily pursuing still plan on waiting a little while before making decisions. I think a lot of them have gotten to this point. They want to wait until potentially after their senior season before making a decision. Hopefully to take some visits. I don't know if visits are going to happen this fall or not, just the way that things are going. But I think a lot of these kids are wanting to wait a little while longer before making commitments. So we'll see what happens. But, as we said last week, we did not have Jalen Milroe on our commitment watch list last week. So there's always the possibility of somebody jumping on board at any moment. And this was a huge get for Alabama today.
All right. Before we let you go, let's talk about Steve Sarkisian and just kind of the job that he's done, not only with the quarterbacks, but from a recruiting perspective. Now $2.5 million, the highest paid assistant in all of college football. What does he bring to Alabama, not only from a coaching philosophy standpoint, but recruiting? He certainly goes after the guys he wants. He played an instrumental role in Tua Tagovailoa, Bryce Young. So continue to talk about kind of what Sarkisian brings to that quarterback room.
Well, he's always been known as an elite recruiter from his days at USC and Washington. He was always a top end recruiter out on the West Coast, and coming to Alabama, has done a great job the last couple of years, and I think he's got a really good chance to pull in some more big guys in this recruiting class. You look at the offensive class overall. Just because you have an area recruiter doesn't mean the coach that's the offensive coordinator or the quarterbacks coach isn't recruiting you as well. And he's had his hand on every single offensive recruit in this recruiting class, and also obviously played a major role in recruiting Jalen Milroe and getting him on board. So got to give a lot of credit to Coach Sark in his recruiting efforts this recruiting class.
Definitely, Bone. It's a big day for the Alabama Crimson Tide. For more recruiting coverage on the Crimson Tide, be sure and go to BamaInsider.com. We got the full scoop on Jalen Milroe. I'm about to bring our team writer in, Tony Tsoukalis. Bone, we're going to exit you out, and we're going to bring Tony in, and we're going to talk about Alabama's 2020 schedule. So thank you so much for joining us, Bone. We'll catch you next time, and we're about to take just a quick break, and we're going to bring in Tony Tsoukalis. So let's see if we can get Tony in here. Tony, what's up, buddy?
Hey, how's it going?
Great. Alabama's football schedule came out. It was just news after news today for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Here's a look at the overall schedule. Missouri, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi State, then open week on November 7th. LSU, Kentucky, Auburn, Arkansas to round out the schedule. Early observations on this particular schedule.
So when I'm looking at this schedule, I'm seeing the Texas A&M at Ole Miss, home against Georgia, and at Tennessee. That's your hard stretch in the schedule. I think most of your hard games here are buffered by easier games. But if you were going to pick a part in the schedule, for me at least, that's a little bit challenging. I look at that because I'm interested to see how improved Lane Kiffin is, and if that's going to be kind of more of a easy game, or can that be like a trap game in between the games against Texas A&M and Georgia, and then that trip to Tennessee could be tough. If they get past that, I think the home game against Mississippi State's really winnable. You got an open date before LSU, which I think is always preferred. That's what Alabama likes to do in the past. So I like that for them. It's kind of weird not having the Auburn game as the last game of the season, but when you look at it, it's still during that Thanksgiving break. So I think it will still feel like your traditional Iron Bowl. And then it's kind of wrapped up by what I think are probably two of the easiest games Alabama will play, like on either end. You start at Missouri. I think that's a really winnable game. And then I think, you end at Arkansas, which should be really easy. And I think if Alabama is, in contention or, going for an SEC West title, I think that's a great way that they can kind of maybe recharge for a potential SEC championship game, because not only will they get that game against Arkansas, which, I mean, let's face it, is kind of a gimme, then they also have a bye week afterwards. So I think that, I think from an Alabama perspective, I kind of like the way this set up for Alabama. I think, there are parts that, could be challenging. I mean, looking at LSU versus Kentucky versus Auburn could be kind of challenging, but I think that 4-game stretch early in the season, starting at A&M and ending at Tennessee, is really going to be the most challenging spot for me.
We have Tony Tsoukalas of BamaInsider.com with us right now. If you just missed it, Jalen Milroe, Rivals 100 quarterback, has committed to Alabama. Flip from Texas. Go to BamaInsider.com. Tons of coverage on Jalen Milroe. Gigantic day of news for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama also held their first practice of this season, and there's a lot to go over with Alabama. Nick Saban talked about several items today. Tony, did you have any takeaways from Saban's press conference? He touched on a variety of topics, and we certainly will bring that press conference to you later on this evening. Let's start kind of with Dylan Moses. He's talked about Dylan Moses, such a great leader coming back for this season.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan Moses, he says Saban didn't go too in-depth into injuries, but he did say that Dylan Moses was full go, as are the rest of Alabama's players. When you look at, Will Riker, LeBrian Ray, Joshua McMillan, it sounds like all of those guys are, all participating and ready to go. I think the only player that's hurt right now is Ali Cajo, and he's just got a slight knee injury. I think he'll be out for the next couple of days, but I don't even think that's anything major to go with as well.
What about this offensive line? So much experience coming back to this 2020 season. Alex Leatherwood, certainly a guy you got to think is going to anchor this entire offensive line. So much experience returning to the 2020 season.
Yeah. It was interesting to see how they, play that out, because there's a few ways they can do it. But when you're looking at this offensive line, it really can be the strength of this offense. You return 4 out of 5 starters, and you've got first-round guys like Alex Leatherwood. And I think, you'll look at it, and maybe in another year, Evan Neal will be a first-rounder as well. So a lot of talent here. Big guys, movers. You guys got like Landon Dickerson and Deontay Brown. So guys that can really contribute in the run game. And then you have really nice bookends, which I think they're going to move Neal to that other tackle. So I think you're sitting in really good shape there.
And as we talked about earlier, with the veteran experience coming back with Dylan Moses, you also have Joshua McMillan coming back, and a lot of guys who played in the inside linebacker position last year. And Saban talked about, the fact that the defense certainly needs to improve going into this 2020 season. Yeah,
definitely. I think that's if you look at this team, the I guess weakness that they would have would be on defense, and I think that's the spots that's the unit that needs the most holes to be filled. They got to fill both their starting 2 pass rushers, and then 4 out of the 5 defensive backs in the secondary. So we've talked about that a lot this offseason. I think that's the biggest question mark heading into Alabama, is just, can they get that pass rush, and can they kind of sort out the secondary? But I expect them to do that. I do think it's going to be a little bit tough, because if you look at it, they won't really have the time to. They're going to have to grow up really fast. Let's put it that way. When you look at some of those games early, Texas A&M week 2, that could be a challenging game, and Georgia week 4, another one. So they're going to have to grow up pretty fast. But I think they'll have that ability to do so.
Lastly, before we let you go, Tony, this show started out with a quarterback committing to Alabama, Jalen Milroe. If you want to watch this, be sure and rewatch it. Take a quick minute to thumbs up and to subscribe to this channel for more Alabama football coverage. But there's another quarterback that's returning for Alabama, Mac Jones. You've talked about Mac Jones, all summer season since last season. Talk about, his veteran leadership and what you feel that's going to provide for this team going into this season.
Yeah, I think, you're just going to get a big-time leader in Mac Jones, and somebody that I feel like, and I feel like a broken record saying this, but I feel like he'll end up being the best quarterback in the SEC. I truly think that he's got, all the cards in his favor. He's got a great offense around him, a great line blocking for him, and I really think we're going to see him take even another step up. We've already seen him perform against top-level competition in Michigan and in Auburn as well, and so I think he's going to be ready for it. I think he's going to be probably one of the driving forces for Alabama early on that's going to really help them right the ship and get through some of those tough games early on.
Hey, thank you so much, Tony Hill, for the contribution tonight. $10. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. One of our goals at BamaInsider.com is certainly to provide you with the premier coverage on the Alabama Crimson Tide, whether that's the team coverage, whether that's the recruiting side. Both Tony and Andrew do a fantastic job when it comes to that coverage. So be sure, and continue to support us. We certainly appreciate that, whether that's just on social media, whether that's back at BamaInsider.com, whether that's right here on YouTube. So please thumbs up this video. It certainly goes a long way. More coverage coming to you at BamaInsider.com. I got an exclusive Nugget report coming your way. You don't want to miss that. Jalen Milroe has committed to Alabama. Big night for Alabama. You got the scheduling. You got Nick Saban speaking to the media. You got Jalen Milroe. You got the schedule. I mean, it doesn't stop, and we'll continue to provide you with coverage back at BamaInsider.com. Free promo code to the website is simply Roll Tide at checkout. Alabama now with 19 committed prospects. Who's next? Go to BamaInsider.com. Chat with thousands of Alabama Crimson Tide football fans. We'll catch you soon. BamaInsider.com. He's Tony Sukalis. I'm Kyle Henderson. We had Andrew Boner on earlier, and we'll catch you soon. Have a good night, everyone.